Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you're here. Ginny O'Leary and myself, Rhona Ginny, we are partners for positive change in helping the consumer to navigate the complex landscape of insurance in Canada. And for those of you who joined us last time, Ginny laid out a framework for why critical illness is important, how it works, why it is a critical component of your financial plan. And today, Ginny and I thought that we would do an interesting wrap up to that discussion and include, when we reflect back on the last 20 years in service in the insurance industry, how parallel our connections were, and at the same time, the complexities we were able to help advisors that you are dealing with to navigate the conversations and why living benefits conversations are so important. So Ginny, welcome again. It's so great to see you. And I'm going to turn it over to you and start with some thoughts about our last 20 years of connection and how it has helped advisors and the consumer with living benefits discussions.
Yeah, so Rona and I, right before we did this recording, and I'll be brief, everybody, realized I certainly realized she was already my partner at the beginning of the time in my career where I made a decision to focus on living benefits, and that is empowering and partnering with advisors, financial advisors, to protect all of you, to make sure you have a health fund, and to make sure your income is protected. And throughout those 20 plus years, as young as we look, just kidding.
Oh, age is no barrier.
Can
No
you tell
barrier.
we have fun? We have fun with this. Throughout those 20 plus years, we've seen many things. And I thought, for the purposes of this episode, because it's not very long, I would share two stories. And one story was one that I saw all, throughout my career periodically. It was unfortunately not uncommon. There was a young lady in her early 30s who was at the really she was doing well. She was a dental hygienist as a profession, and she had just gotten married. So they were in their second year of marriage. They had just bought a home, and she had critical illness insurance protection with a company that I worked with at the time. And her advisor gave me a call to say that, oh my client, gave me a call, and she was in the early diagnosis stage for cancer. And without getting into it, it was a women's cancer, one of the more common women's cancer. I believe it started in the breast. So my advisor had called and said, I know this is covered under the policy, but she's in the midst of being diagnosed. It's not yet sure. And do you think it's a good idea to start the claims process now? Should I be talking to her about it? And this is common with advisors. They would say to me, because, Ginny, I don't want her to go through this if she's not going to receive a payout. And I said, so first of all, I said, I highly encourage you to get it started. Number two, I can help you with positioning the fact that if it's not a payout, what it means is she's actually quite healthy, that it's not there, or if there's a suspicion, they're going to do something to remove it because it's not there. Okay. So the advisor said, all right, I'll let her know. So claims process starts at the same time the client is beginning to go for tests. And unfortunately, the diagnosis was that she had it. The positive news was it was in an early stage of her breast cancer. And so here's the good news, because she had the policy. She received a payout. It wasn't a whole payout of the policy. So this is a reminder, everybody, that your critical illness policy is like, there are layers to it. right? So it was an early payout because the company knew, science knew, decades of research knew that she was going to survive. Okay. So that's one part of the same story. 9 months later, the cancer had spread to other parts of her body. And so the advisor had called me again and said, Ginny, what do I do? And I said, the claims still there. They have the records. Just we will go back and we will now submit the tests. And she received a full payout. As I share this story, I want everybody to know that she is alive and well. She has received treatment. She has used that money. It helped her tremendously because she was off for 2 years. And this is the advisor who shared this story with me. It helped take care of the mortgage payments and different debts that they were paying down because they took on, other debt as well. And she has come back to her practice and she has made life decisions around how much she wanted to do that. So that's story number one. Story number two is a little bit shorter, maybe not as pleasant. Another advisor gave me a call, and this time it was a heart diagnosis of a client of his, also a woman client. So for some reason, I'm thinking about the woman.
Yeah.
Maybe because just we're women.
Yeah.
And so I got the call, and it was a time where the critical illness policy had an ancillary benefit, which Rona knows very well, called the medical second opinion. So that exists, by the way, everybody, in all the contracts today. And the advisor wanted access to that benefit because the client, the wife, um, was going through a period of diagnosis around her heart. It wasn't confirmed. Could they use the service? So the first question was, what's her policy number? And the advisor had said to me, Ginny, this is the hard part. The husband was a higher income earning individual, made 3 times more income than the wife. He actually presented a policy for both of them. And they had both decided, since he made 70% of the income, they would rather protect him and not her. So he had called me to ask if that ancillary benefit for a second opinion service was something that she could access, because they would be, in whatever they decided, they were just going to be out of pocket if they couldn't get the treatment in Canada. And this was in the early days of the product, Rhona. So
Yes.
it did not extend to family members at that time. So we pushed very, very, very hard. I pushed very, very hard to help her, make an exception to help get her the benefit, because it was a very difficult time for the family. The husband had now stepped away from his profession as a lawyer to help her go through this difficult time. And so that is a story where she did not have the protection, relied on her husband policy for that benefit. Obviously, his policy didn't pay out because it wasn't him that had the heart condition, it was her. And they were out of pocket. So that advisor, he shares that story, and he shared that story with other advisors, his peers, to say, we have to be an advocate, because sometimes our clients, they think they're making the best decision, but we have to be an advocate that when you have a family where both incomes are required, and the wife is taking care of so many other things, not just the money, right? They had
Exactly.
two young
Yeah.
kids under the age of 10.
Mm.
That came to a bit of a stop. Like, mother-in-law had to come in, mom had to alternate. So those are my two stories. So all of you listening, please, 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 if you don't have the coverage, I am really saying to you, talk to your advisor. Now's the time. Now's the time, because the product has evolved. It is so rich today for what you were gonna pay for it. It's so rich. truly is an asset in your balance sheet. If you're thinking, oh, this is an expense. No, actually, whatever amount you buy goes into the asset side of your balance sheet. So, Rhona, we're
Mhm.
9 minutes into our interview.
Yes.
I'm so sorry this was longer.
No,
I'm
it's,
gonna turn it over to you.
I'm reminded with you sharing the stories, both of those individuals had coverage,
Yes.
whether it was in the family unit or
Oh, thank
independently.
you.
I'd like to share some examples of clients that didn't have the coverage and clients who did have the coverage. And one of the things I found, if I just look at the span of how long you and I have, I feel very blessed to have you in my life. And the fact that we each have such a high regard for helping advisors to help their clients be prepared for the unexpected. I'm reminded of one story where an advisor shared with me that a client that he did not uh, have the good fortune to convince her to take out coverage where a claim ensued. And it was so uncomfortable for him because what was he going to do? She had to take money out of her investments. Last time you talked about the GoFundMe pages. How many GoFundMe pages are there out there for people that are ill or their children are ill? Then I'm reminded of that very same advisor. He hadn't seen this one client for a while, and he hadn't been returning his calls. And then one day this client just showed up in his office. This was an advisor back east. And he was donning this really cool hat. And he thought, I've never known you to wear a hat. So fortunately, the advisor was able to take him to come into his office and chat and said, what have you been up to? I have not been able to get through to you. And this was a single gentleman. He was on his own. He was, in fact, one time married with a family and was on his own. And he said, well, he was quiet for a minute. Then he took his hat off and he was bald. I said, oh, I didn't know. I didn't know you were changing your hairstyle. Something funny like that. And he said, I just came in to thank you because I guess he'd gone through the claims process himself. I'm not sure if this was, how old the policy was. He said, I have been dealing with cancer and I was traveling the world. And he said, I just came in to thank you for telling me how important it was to protect my financial plan, to protect my resources in the event that I had a claim. And it was a significant policy, I believe in excess of 150,000.
Wow.
And that advisor became an advocate to everyone in the office, that you don't know when your client comes in to see you whether they had the conversation with you about critical illness or whether they did not. Think about how you would feel if this was your client. We want our audience to know that every advisor that is licensed to provide advice, whether it's of a financial nature, whether it's of a protection nature, you and I, Ginny, are on the same page on this. We believe it is an obligation to bring the conversation up. And if your advisor has not brought it up, you might want to contemplate what kind of advice you're truly getting. And I really feel it's time for that statement to be made, that consumers become empowered to say to their advisor, I do have some life insurance, but we've never talked about it. I mean, is this enough? I mean, or a lot of times advisors talk about insurance when it's a react mode situation where a client has a health issue. But we need to focus and help advisors to understand that consumers are going to be asking them. And once I take out this policy, what kind of service can I expect from you? I love that we're doing this, that we are bringing this education to consumers because it's time for them to be empowered. They can ask the question. Don't just, and we've said this so many times, haven't we, Ginny? It is not a buy it and forget about it product. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a term insurance policy to cover your mortgage or while your children are young, or if you have education or debt situations that you have to address in a family. It is the responsibility of an advisor that is giving you advice to discuss living benefits. Because remember, you're not gone, you're still here. And
Ah,
with living benefits, you're able to support what you have to go through or what your family has to go through with dignity, that there's money coming in. And not, I don't know, I'm sure, Ginny, you know this too. I have never had an advisor say to me, the family was not grateful for that money.
oh, 100%.
And it's what, it's what,
100%.
it's what the product is designed to do. Yes, some critical illness plans have a return of premium rider, which is, we want a client to know they have access to that. Now, what does that mean? Well, if they don't have a claim after a period of time, they can apply to get 50 or whatever percentage they're allowed to at the time. Or when
Yes,
the policy is due to expire and they haven't had a claim, let's say age 75, that's young by today's standards, then they
yeah,
can get all their premiums back.
exactly.
So I think it's also to what you and I have hopefully encouraged our audience to understand is that they need to review what they have. I mean, the story you shared about this ancillary benefit for family, because the critical illness offers anyone in the family who has suffered a critical illness to have access to a best doctors, or I mean, they have access to something. They don't necessarily have to be the one insured themselves. That I don't think people know.
Yes, no, and Rona, this is a great way to kind of round it out and end this is
Yeah.
just as you're reviewing your life insurance policies, as we've encouraged that from the very beginning of our series, also review your critical illness insurance policies because some of you might think, oh yeah, I think I have that in some form. And it's great if you actually pull it out and review it. And like Rona says, if it was still paper, some of it is still today, blow off the dust.
Yes,
Look
and
into it and remember
totally.
you have it.
And even if anyone in the audience says, oh, I don't have any individual life insurance because I've got everything I need through my group plan at work. Let me ask you this. How many of you have had your employer come to you and say, we're going to do an information session on your group insurance benefits? The only time that happens is when they're changing a carrier or they're changing your benefits on you. So it's your advisor can also, through, with your permission, get access to understanding your group benefits plan and be able to tell you if you have critical illness or disability and how much life insurance you have. Is it 1 times your salary? Is it 2 times your salary? When we know that people assume they're covered and then they realize, oh my goodness, I didn't know I had these gaps. That's what a professional insurance advisor will do for you. It's out there.
So thank you, everybody. We're going to see you again. And we really hope you enjoyed this. And sometimes we feel like we do it for us, but we know
Yeah.
you're watching. So thank you and bye, everybody.
See you next time. Bye.